You were never taught how power actually works. From the moment you were old enough to listen, they filled your head with comfortable stories about how the world works. Be kind, be patient, play fair, trust others, do good and good will come back to you. Beautiful words, poisonous advice, because while you were busy being good, the wolves were busy being great. While you were waiting your turn, the dangerous ones were taking theirs, and they didn't apologize for it, not once. Here's what nobody tells you. The world was never designed to reward the gentle. It was designed to reward the prepared. History doesn't remember the man who was fair. It remembers the man who was formidable. It doesn't carve statues of the humble. It builds monuments to the ones who were willing to do what everyone else was too afraid to even think about. The kings who shaped civilization, who redrew borders with blood and strategy, who outlasted enemies and outwitted allies, they operated on a completely different level of thinking. A colder level, a darker one. Machiavelli saw it all clearly. Centuries ago, he sat down and wrote the one book that the powerful kept for themselves and the weak were discouraged from reading. Not because it was evil, but because it was honest, brutally, surgically, unapologetically honest about how power moves, how people behave, and what it actually takes to survive at the top. He didn't write fiction, he wrote reality with the mask ripped off. This is Psyche Session, and today we go where most channels are too comfortable to go. We are pulling 9 ice-cold lessons directly from the minds of history's most dangerous rulers, men who were feared, respected, and ultimately untouchable. Men who understood human nature at its darkest and used that understanding like a blade. We are not here to make you feel good. We are here to make you dangerous, sharp, unreadable, unmovable, because the world hasn't gotten softer. The game hasn't gotten fairer. The only thing that's changed is whether or not you're willing to learn the rules that actually matter. So, before we begin, go to the comments right now and write, "I move in silence and strike with purpose. Claim it, own it. Now, let's begin." Lesson number 1. The kings who changed history never asked for permission. Let that title sink into your skull. The men who built empires, who rewrote maps in blood, who made entire nations kneel, not one of them waited for someone to hand them the crown. They reached out, grabbed it, and dared the world to take it back. Permission is a concept invented by the powerful to control the obedient. History's most dangerous rulers understood one thing above everything else. The moment you ask for permission, you have already admitted that someone else holds authority over your destiny. And a man who surrenders that authority, even for a second, will spend the rest of his life serving someone else's vision instead of building his own. Julius Caesar didn't ask Rome if he could cross the Rubicon. He crossed it. He knew the consequences. He calculated the odds. And then he moved anyway, because he understood that hesitation is just fear wearing a disguise. The world respects the man who moves, not the man who waits for the right moment. Genghis Khan was born with nothing. No throne, no army, no noble bloodline to hide behind. What he had was a mind that refused to accept the limits the world placed on him. He didn't petition the existing powers for a seat at the table. He burned the table. Then he built a new one, and he decided who sat. This is the first cold truth. The world will never formally invite you into power. There is no ceremony. There is no moment where the universe taps your shoulder and says, "Now it's your turn." That moment doesn't exist. The kings who changed history created their moment by moving before anyone could stop them. Most people are waiting. They're waiting for conditions to be perfect, for confidence to arrive, for circumstances to align. Meanwhile, the dangerous ones are already 3 moves ahead, already executing, already eliminating obstacles. They don't wait because they understand. Waiting is just slow surrender. So right now, go to the comments, write, "I don't wait for the crown, I take it." Say it like you mean it. Say it like a man who has finally stopped asking the world for what was always his to claim. Because from this point forward, you don't ask, you move. Lesson number 2. Every man who ever trusted blindly built his own grave. Read that heading again, slowly. Because this isn't a metaphor, this is a pattern that has repeated itself across every civilization, every dynasty, every empire that has ever risen and collapsed. The graveyard of history is filled with powerful men who were not defeated by their enemies. They were destroyed by the people they trusted. Machiavelli wrote it plainly. A prince who relies entirely on the loyalty of others without ever questioning that loyalty is not strong. He is simply lucky. And luck, as history has proven with brutal consistency, always runs out. The most dangerous person in any man's life is never the open enemy. It is the trusted ally with a hidden agenda. Caesar didn't fall because Rome's enemies were stronger. He fell because he walked into the Senate surrounded by men he called friends, and every single blade that entered his body was held by a familiar hand. 23 wounds, 23 betrayals. The most powerful man in the world, destroyed not by an army but by proximity and misplaced trust. The Byzantine emperor Nikephoros Phocas was one of the greatest military minds of his era. Undefeated on the battlefield, feared across continents. He was assassinated in his own bedroom by his own nephew, a man he had personally elevated, protected, and trusted with his innermost circle. Power didn't kill him. Blindness killed him. This is the lesson that the powerful learn and the naive refuse to accept. People do not operate from loyalty. They operate from interest. The moment your value to someone decreases, the loyalty they performed for you disappears with it. This is not cynicism. This is cold, documented, historical fact. The dangerous man doesn't become paranoid. He becomes precise. He watches. He observes the gap between what people say and what people do. He understands that a man's true character is never revealed in his words. It is revealed in the moment when betraying you becomes more profitable than protecting you. So here is your cold instruction. Trust your vision completely. Trust your discipline completely. Trust people only as far as your observation of their actions, not their words, has earned them. Drop a comment right now. Write, "I trust actions, never performances." Because the kings who survived longest weren't the most loved. They were the most observant. Lesson number 3. Fear is not your enemy. It is the most obedient weapon you will ever wield. Every weak man running from fear is leaving the most powerful weapon in human psychology completely untouched on the battlefield. The kings who lasted, the rulers who built legacies that echoed across centuries, didn't manage fear. They mastered it. They understood that fear is not a feeling, it is a force, and forces can be directed. Machiavelli asked one of the most dangerous questions ever put to paper. Is it better to be loved or to be feared? And then he answered it with the cold precision of a surgeon. Love is conditional. Love is emotional. Love evaporates the moment circumstances change or self-interest enters the room. But fear, properly installed, does not negotiate. It does not fluctuate with mood. Ivan the Terrible understood this at a molecular level. He didn't simply punish his enemies. He constructed punishment so precise, so calculated, so publicly devastating that the mere thought of crossing him became physically unbearable for anyone watching. He wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. He was strategic. Every act of severity was a message written in a language everyone understood. The Ottoman Sultan Selim I earned the name the Grim, not by accident, but by design. He executed 2 of his own grand viziers within a single year, not because they failed him necessarily, but because he understood that men who fear replacement perform differently than men who feel secure. Security breeds complacency, and complacency in the world of power is a slow and invisible death. Here is what the history books soften but the truth refuses to. Respect built purely on admiration is fragile. It depends on your continued performance, your continued generosity, your continued likability. But respect built on the quiet, ever-present awareness that you are not a man to be tested, that respect is structural, It holds even when you are absent. This doesn't mean you rule your life through cruelty. It means you understand that boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. It means you stop being the man people feel comfortable disrespecting. It means you cultivate a presence so deliberate, so unreadable, so precisely controlled that people instinctively calculate twice before they move against you. The coldest men in history were never the loudest. They were the stillest, still waters, unreadable depths. Write in the comments right now. My silence is not weakness, it is the warning. Say it, because from this point forward, your stillness becomes your most feared weapon. Lesson number 4. The most lethal kings in history never revealed what they were truly thinking. There is a reason the most dangerous predators in nature move without sound. Silence is not emptiness, it is strategy wearing an invisible coat. The rulers who lasted the longest, who outmaneuvered the cleverest opponents, who survived courts filled with conspirators and backstabbers, they all shared one uncommon discipline. They revealed nothing, absolutely nothing. Machiavelli understood that a man who speaks his plans openly has already begun to lose. The moment your intentions leave your mind and enter the world through your mouth, you have handed your enemy a map. You have shown them the destination before the journey even begins. And a prepared enemy is an advantage you personally gifted them. Philip II of Spain was one of the most unreadable monarchs in recorded history. His own advisors, men who spent decades in his presence, reported that they could never determine what he was truly thinking. He would listen, he would nod, he would dismiss them politely, and then he would execute a plan nobody saw coming, with a precision that made his opponents feel they had been outmaneuvered before the game even started. Cardinal Richelieu, the architect of French absolute power, operated so deeply in layers of misdirection that even his closest allies were never entirely certain of his true agenda. He allowed people to believe what was comfortable for them to believe. He never corrected useful misconceptions. He understood that controlling what people think you're doing is just as powerful as controlling what you're actually doing. This is the forbidden knowledge that the powerful protect and the naive never discover. Your thoughts are your most valuable currency, and just like currency, the moment you spend it carelessly, it is gone. Every detail you reveal about your plans, your fears, your desires, your next move, is a weapon you have voluntarily placed in someone else's hands. The unreadable man is the unconquerable man. When people cannot predict you, they cannot prepare for you. When they cannot prepare for you, they cannot stop you. You move through the world like a closed book in a room full of people desperate to read you, and that desperation alone gives you an advantage most men will never understand. Cultivate mystery like it is armor, because it is. Go to the comments and write, "You will never see me coming." Mean every single word of it. Lesson number 5. The throne was never won by the most talented, it was won by the most ruthlessly patient. Talent is common. Walk into any room and you will find gifted people, men and women with skills, intelligence, and potential that the world will never fully witness. You know why? Because talent without patience is a loaded weapon with no trigger discipline. It fires too early, too loudly, too desperately, and destroys the very target it was meant to hit. History's most dangerous kings were not always the most gifted men in their kingdoms. They were the most disciplined waiters. Not passive waiters, predatory waiters. There is a difference that most people never understand. Passive waiting is hope dressed as strategy. Predatory waiting is silent preparation with absolute certainty that your moment is being constructed in the dark. Augustus Caesar is perhaps the greatest example of predatory patience in all of recorded history. After Julius Caesar's assassination, the young Augustus, then just 18 years old, did not panic, did not overreach, did not reveal his hunger for power openly. He watched, he calculated, he allowed his enemies to underestimate him, and then, over decades, he dismantled every single one of them without ever appearing to try. He didn't just win, he made winning look inevitable. That is the signature of a truly dangerous man. Not that he fought hard, but that by the time his enemies realized the war was happening, it was already over. He turned patience into a weapon so sharp that his opponents bled out before they even felt the cut. This is the cold truth that separates the powerful from the merely ambitious. Ambition without timing is just noise. The world is full of ambitious men making noise, announcing their plans, broadcasting their hunger, performing their drive for an audience that will use that information against them the moment opportunity arises. The dangerous man starves his ambition in public and feeds it in private. He looks calm when he is building. He looks unbothered when he is positioning. He looks still when he is, in reality, moving with the quiet, unstoppable momentum of a glacier, reshaping everything in its path without making a single sound that would alert what lies ahead. Patience is not weakness. Patience is the sharpest blade in the arsenal of the truly dangerous. Write in the comments, "I am not waiting, I am preparing in silence," because the most powerful move you will ever make is the one nobody saw coming until it was already done. Lesson number 6. The kings who survived the longest never destroyed their enemies. They made their enemies destroy themselves. This is the lesson that separates the merely powerful from the truly diabolical. Any man with enough force can destroy an enemy directly. It takes strength, it takes resources, but it also leaves evidence, creates martyrs, and manufactures new enemies from the ashes of the old ones. The truly dangerous kings discovered something far colder. Make your enemy the author of his own destruction. Machiavelli whispered this truth between the lines of everything he wrote. The most elegant form of power is invisible power. When your enemy falls by his own hand, by his own arrogance, by his own miscalculation that you quietly engineered, you remain clean, untouchable, and the most terrifying part, nobody can point at you because there is nothing visible to point at. Emperor Augustus perfected this art with surgical precision. He never openly eliminated political rivals through brute force alone. Instead, he created conditions, subtle, carefully constructed social and political pressures that pushed his enemies into making catastrophic decisions themselves. He didn't destroy them. He simply arranged the room so that destruction was the only door they could find. Elizabeth I of England operated with this same cold intelligence across an entire reign spanning 4 decades. She surrounded threatening rivals with enough rope, enough false comfort, enough strategic freedom, until they inevitably hanged themselves with their own ambition. She didn't fight her enemies. She curated circumstances until her enemies became the undeniable architects of their own downfall. Here is the forbidden mechanism behind this lesson. Human ego is the most reliable weapon ever discovered. A man's pride will consistently override his intelligence when properly provoked. The dangerous king doesn't attack the enemy's strength. He strokes the enemy's ego until that ego grows so bloated, so reckless, so blind with confidence that it drives him directly into catastrophe. You do not need to lift a single visible finger. You need only to understand people deeply enough to know exactly which lever, when pulled quietly, will send them spiraling into self-destruction. That understanding, cold, precise, and ruthlessly patient, is the darkest form of intelligence that history's most untouchable rulers ever possessed. The most dangerous weapon ever forged was never made of steel. It was made of psychology. Write in the comments, "I don't break my enemies, I watch them break themselves." Because the man who never appears to fight is the man who never appears to lose. Lesson number 7. The dangerous man never fights on someone else's battlefield. He chooses the terrain, or he doesn't fight at all. Every defeat in history shares one common thread. The losing side was fighting on terms they didn't choose, on ground they didn't select, under conditions that were designed, deliberately or accidentally, to favor their opponent. Defeat is rarely about inferior strength. It is almost always about inferior positioning. The dangerous king never allows someone else to choose the arena. Machiavelli was precise about this. A ruler who reacts is already behind. Reaction means someone else initiated. Someone else chose the moment, the conditions, the angle of attack. And a man responding to someone else's initiative is spending energy catching up instead of executing. The truly dangerous man forces the world to react to him, never the other way around. Hannibal Barca demonstrated this principle with a cold genius that military strategists still study with quiet reverence centuries later. At the Battle of Cannae, outnumbered and fighting on foreign soil, he didn't accept the battlefield as it was presented. He psychologically and physically manipulated Roman positioning until Rome's own momentum, Rome's own aggression, Rome's own confidence became the mechanism of its most catastrophic military defeat in history. He didn't overpower Rome. He redirected Rome's power back into Rome's own body. He chose the terms. He manufactured the conditions. He turned the enemy's greatest strength, their numbers, their aggression, their certainty of victory, into the precise instrument of their destruction. That is not just military genius. That is dark psychological mastery operating at its absolute peak. This principle extends far beyond warfare into every arena of modern power. The dangerous man never argues on someone else's emotional terms. He never negotiates from a position someone else constructed. He never responds to provocations on the timeline his provocateur designed. He steps back, resets the board, and re-engages only when the terrain favors him completely and absolutely. This is why the truly powerful are so difficult to rattle. Provocations don't land because the dangerous man refuses to fight in the emotional arena his enemy prepared for him. He simply doesn't show up to battles he didn't design. He waits. He repositions. He selects his moment with the cold deliberateness of a predator who understands that the circumstances of confrontation determine the outcome before the first move is even made. Control the terrain and you control the outcome before the battle begins. Write in the comments, I don't react. I reposition and then I strike. The man who chooses when and where is the man who has already won. Lesson number 8. The crown never sits on the head of the man who needs to be understood. It sits on the head of the man who cannot be decoded. Most men spend their entire lives desperately wanting to be understood. They over-explain. They justify. They defend. They perform vulnerability like it is currency, bleeding their inner world openly into conversations with people who will weaponize that bleeding the moment it becomes convenient. This need, this deeply human need to be known, is the most ruthlessly exploited weakness in the entire architecture of power. History's most dangerous kings were not understood by the people around them. They were studied. They were speculated about. They were feared precisely because the distance between what they showed and what they actually were remained permanently, deliberately unmeasurable. They fed the world a carefully constructed surface and kept the depths entirely, ferociously private. Timur, known to history as Tamerlane, was perhaps the most psychologically complex conqueror who ever lived. Those closest to him reported contradictory observations. He was described simultaneously as deeply intellectual and unspeakably brutal, generous to allies and apocalyptic to enemies. Nobody, not his generals, not his sons, not his most trusted advisors, ever claimed to fully understand him. And that impenetrability was not accidental. It was engineered. The Byzantine court operated on an entire political culture built around this principle. Emperors were trained from birth to present multiple readable surfaces simultaneously, appearing pious to the clergy, militaristic to the generals, philosophical to the scholars. Nobody ever received the complete picture. And because nobody held the complete picture, nobody could construct a complete strategy against them. Incompleteness was their protection. Here is the cold, forbidden mechanics behind this lesson. When people understand you completely, they can predict you. When they can predict you, they can prepare for you. When they can prepare for you, they can neutralize you. Your mystery is not vanity, it is structural defense. Every layer of yourself you withhold from the world is another layer of armor the world cannot penetrate. The man who needs constant validation, who needs people to understand his intentions, who needs to explain himself when questioned, That man is handing out keys to every lock inside him. And in a world populated by people who smile while calculating, distributing those keys is not openness. It is an invitation to be dismantled from the inside by the very people you trusted with your truth. Become the question nobody can answer. Write in the comments, "I am not here to be understood. I am here to be respected." The most unconquerable fortress ever built was not made of stone. It was made of deliberate, disciplined, impenetrable silence. Lesson number 9. The final truth. History's most dangerous kings carried to their graves. Power is never given. It is permanently, ruthlessly taken and then defended with everything you have. This is where everything converges. Every lesson, every cold truth, every dark principle we have walked through in this video leads here, to this final, immovable reality that the powerful understand and the powerless spend entire lifetimes refusing to accept. Power is not a reward. It is not a recognition. It is not something the world distributes to the deserving. It is seized, violently, strategically, unapologetically seized. Machiavelli saved his coldest truth for last. A man who acquires power through luck or through the generosity of others holds it with borrowed hands. And everything borrowed, every throne inherited without the character to defend it, every position granted without the hunger to protect it, will be reclaimed. The universe does not honor recipients. It honors those who are willing to fight to keep what they have taken. Suleiman the Magnificent inherited the most powerful empire on earth, and then, instead of resting inside that inheritance, spent his entire reign expanding, fortifying, and defending it with a ferocity that made it clear to every watching power that what his bloodline had built would not be surrendered without a cost too catastrophic to contemplate. Inheritance gave him the crown. His ruthlessness made it permanent. Frederick the Great of Prussia inherited a kingdom and then, personally, through decades of cold military and political genius, transformed it into a European superpower that redefined the entire continent's balance of force. He understood something that soft men never grasp. The moment you stop defending power actively and aggressively, the moment you assume it is secured, is the precise moment it begins bleeding out of your hands. Here is the final cold equation. Taking power requires courage. Holding power requires something darker, something colder, something that most men are never willing to fully become. It requires the permanent, vigilant understanding that everyone beneath you is capable of rising, everyone beside you is capable of moving against you, and everyone above you, if anyone remains, is already planning to keep you exactly where you are. The dangerous man never exhales completely. He never fully relaxes his grip. He never mistakes a period of peace for a period of safety. He understands that the absence of visible threats does not mean the absence of threats. It simply means his enemies have gotten quieter, more patient, and more dangerous than they were before. This is the final lesson. This is the cold inheritance of history's most untouchable kings. Write in the comments right now. Power is not given. It is taken and defended with everything I have. Say it like a man who has finally understood what game is actually being played. And then, never forget it. If this video reached something inside you that nothing else has, like it, subscribe to Psyche Session, and turn on notifications. Because what's coming next will go even deeper into the psychology of power, dominance, and the cold architecture of the untouchable mind. The next lesson is already waiting. The question is, are you ready for it?